All right, everybody. Thanks for being back again. It is Friday, which means we're back for another episode of Talking Back. Today, we've got a special guest, Jamie Sumner. He played at Ohio State on the offensive line next to one of the greatest to ever do it, if not the greatest to ever do it, Orlando Pace. I had the honor and privilege of covering Jamie and that team and many other teams for many years when I was a Buckeye Sports Bulletin. Jamie, thanks for coming in. You've been keeping yourself busy. I know that you are still involved with football, albeit at a slightly lower level. But right now, from the Ohio State standpoint, from on far, what have you seen that gives you optimism for the season?
Well, I think, from everything I'm seeing and everything I'm reading, it sounds like we're loaded across the board, right? It doesn't sound like there's some new guys and some guys that have to step in to some roles and play big. But I mean, if you just look down the line, we're find a weak spot. I mean, the train, it sounds like the portal was pretty good to us. The kids are developing. There's year two in a defensive system. Coach Day and Coach Hartline continue to reinvent the wheel at Ohio State as far as quarterback play and receiver play. So I'm excited. It's tough. I'm in Oklahoma, so I have to listen to all the OU stuff out here
Mhm.
and Oklahoma State stuff. But no, it's fun. I'm excited to see obviously what they do Saturday. I think at '94, when my first year up there, we had a kind of a situation that they have this year. There was a bunch of new offensive linemen and some good skill guys, and we did okay. So I'm anxious to see those guys perform. And here's the deal: like anything, right? It's Ohio State. We're not. I don't think we're ever going to be bad. There may be a few bumps in the road or some rough spots, but it's Ohio State. I mean, the expectation doesn't change, and we just the old saying of we just reload. I mean, that's pretty much what I think it's going to be again. So I'm excited.
You mentioned a little bit with the portal. It's easier to kind of get some immediate help now. But when you were playing, it was pretty much JUCO transfer or else. And Ohio State at the time was not taking a lot of JUCO transfers. How did you get to Ohio State? Did someone see you? Did you reach out to them? Because it was not a common occurrence back then.
No, so it's interesting. They were actually recruiting a kid that was in our conference, and we played that team. And the kid that they were recruiting, what didn't play very well. I just happened to have a game. I was out of my mind in that game. Played great, and that's kind of what started the ball rolling. Now, Coach Cooper had experience with my junior college head coach and his father. They'd been around, and Coach Cooper had taken some players from Coach Foster before. So there was a relationship there. And then Coach Coker was familiar. That's who actually recruited me. He was from this area, was very familiar with Coffeyville. And so it just was kind of a perfect storm, to be honest with you. And you're right. I remember, showing up to Ohio State and I said I was from a junior college and guys are like, well, what's that? Is that like a prep school or what? They guys just didn't know. And so it was, but they lost a lot of guys after the '93 season, a lot of seniors and some other guys I think didn't pan out as well. And so they came and got me, and it was yeah, it was definitely a unique experience versus a lot of the other teams that were recruiting me that had used junior college guys a lot. And obviously Ohio State to this day, there's been a few over the last 25, 30 years, but not very many.
When you came in, did you kind of look around and say, okay, that guy's Eddie George, that guy's Orlando Pace, that guy's Terry Glenn. I mean, it was just all over the place. There were players. Were you wondering, do I really belong in this spot? Or
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. And the story that a lot of people don't know as far as with me is I started spring ball. They recruited me to play left tackle. And so I come in, I think the first 2 days, maybe I was at left tackle. Our center gets hurt, and they kind of slid everybody over. Juan Porter slid to center.
Mhm.
I slid obviously to left guard. Well, at the time I was a little upset because I came to play tackle. I didn't come to play guard. It was completely different, different techniques and some things had changed. And I was frustrated, but I came out of spring, that first spring that I transferred in, I came out the starter. And then, as everything happens for a reason, right? That fall, Orlando shows up, and if I wouldn't have slid in a spot, I would have been watching from the bench. So it's kind of one of those things that everything happens for a reason. And yeah, to your point, I mean, I can remember in spring ball getting in the huddle with Eddie, and we basically look eye to eye. And I'm just like, this is our tailback. This is just not used to seeing this. And then, obviously the Corey Stringers, the Joey Galloways, the Lorenzo Styles, and there's just, you like to your point, there's guys everywhere. And so I can remember when they were recruiting me they were getting ready for the bowl game, and Coach Cooper pulled me aside and he said, here's the second group. Here's the third group. He was like, if you can't beat these guys out, then you don't come here. If you don't feel like you're one of the five best guys, then you shouldn't sign here. And I honestly, I appreciated that honesty. There was guys I thought could play that I watched, but I was like, you know what, I'm not afraid to compete. And I always told myself when I came out, when I went to junior college, I told myself when I get done, I want to go to the best place, play against the best competition. Obviously Ohio State is that and was that. So ended up, and obviously it worked out. Obviously, it's easy to sit here and tell the story so many years later, right? Because of the way it worked
Right.
out and being able to play so much and play with so many great guys. But yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a few times where it was like, man, this is, what did I get myself into, or do I really belong here? And yeah, but as things, I think that's one of the things that's changed nowadays. It's, guys maybe they don't have to deal with that as much because they'll just transfer, they'll just go somewhere else. So, but yeah, no, I had my moments where I thought, man, I'm in way over my head here.
But it worked out because you did get to the NFL. I mean, you were with the Giants, you were with the Rams. When you were there, did you notice, even though it is football, everyone says that the NFL is a different thing. You learn it's not for the love of the game, it's a business, it's all this other stuff. It did it did that kind of ring true with you? I mean, was it not really the same?
It wasn't the same. I mean, football, you obviously have a change. There's a speed change a little bit, but we played good competition in college, so it wasn't as drastic as probably what it would have been for other people. Um, yeah, and then you don't have to go to sociology 201. You go
Mhm.
study film, or you go to the training room, or it becomes your full time job. And so I wasn't there very long, but that was the thing that I think it taught me is just number one, there's always competition. They're always going to bring somebody in try to replace you. You have to be available. Obviously, that was my problems. I got hurt my first stint, and then the second stint, they cut me because of salary cap stuff and some things like that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely it's an eye opener from a standpoint of there's guys that don't speak to each other off the field, but when they get on the field, they speak to each other. No different than a business. And so, yeah, I mean, it is definitely an eye opening experience, but it's an amazing experience because I think you realize, just like how fortunate you are to even get a shot at it, right? To even be one of the, well, I think, at that time there was 30 teams maybe, and 80 guys could come to camp. So you're talking 2,400, 2,500 players get that opportunity and you're sitting in that room. So, it also, I'll be honest, it kind of told me that whether right or wrong, it kind of gave me a confidence that I could do anything, that I'm never going to bet against myself. And no one thought I would be sitting here. I'm not even sure I thought I'd be sitting there at times, but I was, and I got a couple of different opportunities. And so I think what it did for me was it just taught me, hey, you can, if you want to work at it and you want to go put the time in, you can make it happen. And that's just how I've approached life since then. So,
I know that you still watch the game, and like we said earlier, you're involved with coaching with your son. But when you watch college and pro anymore, do you see that it's a different game? I mean, I know there's so many offensive schemes now, but from an offensive line standpoint, you and Orlando and Juan and those guys, you had some good feet, but you guys were maulers. And now it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of mauling going on anymore, just because everything is so predominantly pass heavy and quick release and all this other stuff. What do you think is the biggest difference for the guys up front for football now? And do you think that that's something that would be harder for you if you were coming up now?
that's a good question. It obviously is. I don't think the game's any less physical. From a standpoint of talent wise, right? I think
Mm.
the physical specimens that are playing now, guys like me are probably relics if you look, from that standpoint. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if guys don't want to line up. I mean, the days of Eddie George carrying the ball 39 times and rushing for 200 plus yards, those days are over. I don't think you'll see that. Maybe one of the service academies or somebody like that, but you're not going to see that. I don't think anymore. Um, I think personally, our groups, both the lines that I was on, I think we would have flourished in this era as well. But to your point, I think our attitude was we wanted to line up and run people over and do those kinds of things and be physical because that's also what the game was at the time. So you wanted to be a tough guy. You didn't want to be a finesse guy. You didn't want to be, that kind of guy. You wanted to be to your point, you wanted to be a mauler but yeah, it's definitely a different game. I would love to basically what we're dealing with now is a 2-minute drive for the whole game, right? I mean, we're not huddling, we're constantly pressuring the defense. I think about some of the talent we had at Ohio State. I would have loved to have seen us in a system like that. I would have loved to have seen, the motions and the jet sweeps and some of those things with guys like Joey and Terry Glenn and some of that stuff. Because I loved giving it, watching Eddie rumble and run for all those yards as well. But that's what I think about more than anything is like, we had some guys that were probably ahead of their time and some of those things. Stan Jackson with some of the, quarterback run game now stuff that's done predominantly. I think he would have been somebody that would have been interesting to see in a pro star. The current style of offense, I think would have been a blast to see. So yeah, it's definitely different. I still love the game. I still love watching, there's definitely been a change, but I think it's still fun to watch the line, the games and the things that go on. I think it's definitely different.
How much joy do you get out of coaching your son, and what position is he playing?
So my son, he plays for the high school now, but coming up, I coached him for I think 6 years, 7 years, but he's an offensive lineman.
Okay.
He plays center. When he was younger, he was a pretty good defensive lineman, but he settled into playing center. Starts for the high school here, and um, it's one of those things where last week his first high school game they played at University of Tulsa, and they had this big game that they play, and it's starting to turn into a rivalry with this team, and it's just interesting because it's like I told him, I said, you played your first high school game at a college stadium in front of about 20,000 people. My first high school game was, again, probably in front of 800 people, 1,000 people. And so I think, there's some things like that that I take a bunch of joy in. And I just try to support him. I don't try to be dad as much as possible. There's times where I step in and, I think he gets tired of it. Sometimes gets tired of hearing some of
Mhm.
the advice, but it's one of those things where I'm fortunate in that I had a good career and I got to experience a bunch of different things. And so I feel like, if I can help him, and obviously that's my job as a parent, right? But it's a little bit different when it's a sport and it's a sport that I love and that he's grown to love. And he's talented. He needs to grow a little bit. If he could just grow, he's way ahead of where I was at the same time. But he just had kind of growth spurt. But it's fun. I mean, it's a blast. When I first got into coaching him, um, I thought it was about the X's and O's. I mean, that was in my mind. I wanted a chess match and I wanted that stuff. Even at a young level, I thought that was it. But at the end of it was I just love the kids, and the kids keep you young and you have fun and you're around a game that you love and you took it the competitive juice, out of it. So, but yeah, it's fun. It was a blast to coach him, and yeah, they got a big game tomorrow night. So hopefully they can bounce back. They lost last week, so I know he's ready to get back out there. So I'm his biggest fan right now for sure.
Well, that's good. And last thing, have you been back to Columbus as much as you would like? And if not, how often do you get back to maybe see a game or just to check in on a couple of the guys or whatever?
Sure. So we always try to come back. The last I don't know, probably since 2000. I used to try to make the Michigan game for sure. I've done that for the last 20 years. I've probably been, I don't know how many. I've probably been to 6 or 7 Michigan games in the last 20 years. Brought my son back to the Penn State game, so I try to make it back. We obviously, like I said, we try to come to the Michigan game every other year. If they play somewhere on the road that we can go catch, we try to go catch that. Um, Obviously, not enough, right? I don't. I mean,
Right.
if I could come back every weekend, I definitely would. I miss it. I love being in the shoe and just the environment. I don't get enough of it, but yeah, definitely. If nothing else, I'm usually parked in front of the TV on Saturday if I can't make it back. But yeah, I don't. Staying in touch with the guys. That's one of the things that's so neat about the Michigan game is the guys that come back for that game and the tunnel of pride and those kinds of things. You just that's a deal that just you can't beat that. Not a lot of programs talk about things like that, and say they have a brotherhood and those things, but it's really evident on times like that just how special what we have is and where we played. So I try to always
Right,
make that.
right. All right. Well, thanks a lot for taking some time to be
Sure.
on today, and best of luck. Best of luck to your son, and maybe you'll get back here this season or next season to see a game, and we'll be in touch down the road.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.